Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the Ardennes classics, focusing of course on Pieterse. We'll cover Yara Kastelijn, Thibaut Nys, and we'll also get into the future of the Intermarché Wanty cross team, which is racing under the banner of Charles Liégeois. And with me to that is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. If my voice is a little bit off, it's because yesterday was King's Day celebration in the Netherlands, and if Issam's voice is off, it's probably for the same reason, but maybe El Clasico final in Copa del Rey had a bit more to do with that, Issam.
Yeah, it could have played a bigger role than King's Day itself, but I think I'm fine. Hopefully, it's also good for the listeners. But yeah, it was a busy day Saturday, but also quite some racing on the screen on the Sunday, but maybe a bit of a boring race that we have seen with Liège.
Well, the men's race was a little bit boring, or very boring, but we're going to start covering the women's race, of course, because Pieterse, rider of the moment, really strong Ardennes campaign. When we last spoke about her, that was after the Tour of Flanders. We were a little bit skeptical of the number of races she had done. At that point, it was indicated that she would also start Paris-Roubaix. Luckily, she didn't do that. She took a bit of rest to prepare for the Ardennes, and it went really well. In the Amstel Gold Race, she made an anticipation move, which went all the way to the end. Quite surprisingly from that group, the best climbers, she, together with Juliette Labou, got beaten by Misha Bredewold and Ellen van Dijk. Pieterse afterwards recognized that she had raced too aggressively, made too many moves, Issam. I think that was really the case on the final loop. We didn't see how this breakaway established because unfortunately the coverage was very limited. But when we saw the racing, we saw a lot of Pieterse on the front, attacking on the Kouberg, attacking on the Gulhammerberg, but ultimately lacking under pressure on the final ascent of the Kouberg. A third place, I thought, actually was still relatively impressive in that sprint, considering that Labous pretty much dropped her on the final ascent.
I think the podium was a positive, and it felt like she also took the positive from that, but it was indeed a race in which she was very active, a little too active, and I think that has been the story up until that point, in which we have seen Pieterse at times, showing that she is in good form, but sometimes at times technically just lacking a little bit the being there at the right moves and making, spending too much energy at times where it is not really necessary, and just make use of that. And I think the same was again in the Amstel Gold Race, and that cost her in the end maybe a better result. But I feel that there it was also, apart from that, she was looking quite good and she had good form, and I think overall she could be very happy with the performance there as well. But it was just, tactically, she made some moves that didn't really help her in the end.
It's not the first time that we've concluded that Pieterse is too active in the race. We said the same after the Tour of Flanders. In Dwars door Vlaanderen, we also said, just that little bit too much effort. But those weren't bad races. Her top 10 streak throughout the entire season is still going. But what was positive, because we can't forget that she still is a very young rider. She's turning 23 in 2 weeks' time. She's learning from these mistakes. It is just her second season of doing real road racing at the highest level. She's done road racing before in the youth categories. She did in 2023 a blitz campaign racing Estrade, but this is really just the second season that she's doing it. And in Flèche Wallonne, for which I personally didn't have the highest expectations because I was questioning whether she was explosive enough. I thought she could make a play for a top 5, maybe a podium, but she took the win. She surpassed Demi Vollering in the final 250 meters of the climb. And afterwards she said, I decided to listen to my director sportif today to limit all the attacking, to wait as long as possible. And you could really see it in hindsight when I looked at it back and then remembered that interview in my mind. I could see, okay, you can really see that she's holding back here. She's waiting. At a few instances, she moved halfway past Vollering, but then decided to slot back in the wheel. At one point, she nearly tapped the wheel of Vollering, and it's a move that happens quite a lot in the peloton, but you don't really see it in the context as we could see it there. She waited for the final moment, placed the attack, and won her first one-day race in her still very young road career. And that racing style of being smart also carried over to Liège, where she didn't make early moves and kept waiting, which is a big positive in my opinion.
Absolutely, and what a difference that can make for the results and overall what you're able to show at the moment that it matters the most. And I think La Flèche is definitely a race in which tactically somewhat pretty straightforward, but I think even for, you never know with Pieterse, she could have gone there the climb earlier or try something else. And I think now it was just the way to go. And I had to laugh a little bit when she was in the post interview talking about listening to her directeur sportif, listening to the instructions given. That tells me also something about the amount of times they have told her that she had to be, a bit more tactical with her racing. But in Liège, it was also, I think, a big positive. I can understand that it is boring in a way, but that is where you benefit the most from. It's road racing in a way is just how it goes, and you gotta be tactical in with your decisions, because that is in the end, when the moves are made, you need to have the energy to make the moves. And I think that was what really lacked at times. And I think now again, especially on Rochefoucauld, she knew that uphill, that's where you have to make the moves and put the others under pressure, and she was able to follow Vollering, who took over from her. And I think she can be very happy with both races. And it was funny that she also said it, that, it almost felt like, what a shame that she was not able to win it. And that turnaround is actually interesting to see, because normally I think we would have said, oh yeah, well, second in Liège, that's something to be very proud of. But now it felt a little bit more towards a reaction of, it was a bit of a shame that she was not able to take the victory. And I think it just shows where she's actually at as a road rider. She's one of the best at the moment, I think, and has a very bright future in this discipline. And I hope that in the next coming years she's able to show it to us and show it to the fans. And I think that it is a great character to have in road cycling.
Definitely. She has a personality which is always a positive. It appears she is very much liked within the peloton as well. Very friendly, very outgoing. So all those things play in her favor. And yeah, I agree with your points about today's strategy. We're recording this on Sunday night in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It was good to see her timing of attacks and being able to respond to Vollering and put in a really, really big push. And for how boring the men's race was, the women's race definitely more than made up for that, in my opinion, because we had that anticipation move with Anna van der Breggen on the Redoute. She's been sick, wasn't in her best form, which is unfortunate because she looked really, really good in Strade earlier. And then we had Pieterse, who waited, made the move on the Faucon when everything came back together. We had an intermediate push in between led by FDG. Kopecky going very strong, but then on the second part of the Faucon, she parked, but it was Lecour who managed to stick with her. And as much as I like Pieterse and would have liked to see her win, I also think it's important, and yes, we're a cyclocross podcast, but it's very cool to see Kimberly Lecour take a win here. She is the first African rider, man or woman, to win a race of this caliber with this prestige. She's 29. She's only made her Women's World Tour debut last year. Got picked up by AG Insurance. Natasha Knave, she was the one recognizing her talent, taking an outside shot at her. And I will say it again, the scouting network of Natasha Knave den Oude is phenomenal. The riders that she's able to pick up at various different places, at various different levels, is impressive. They've been finding them everywhere. In the youth ranks, they've found talent from Greece, very talented second-year junior within that structure. So, yeah, I thought that was really good and nice to see her take the win at such an, relatively late age to start cycling, and really an attribute that even at a later age you can still make a formidable career out of cycling, even if that comes at the cost of Pieterse, who I do support on the road.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shame, but I think it was a very a very strong ride from Lecour, and the way she was able to put herself back in the race, because she wasn't there at first, but eventually was there and made contact with the three up front, and she has a strong sprint, especially after such a race, and she was able to deploy that and take the victory. And I think, as you say, it is on the women's side, road cycling, it's in development in a way, and we see that with talents that they are able to get in the sport at, I would say, a later age than it is at the, on the men's side. You see that less often, I guess. But I think that is just, it's a great development, I have to say, and it's very nice to see that that it's not the same names every time winning the races. It's different from race to race, and I think that's only good for the women's sport in that regard. And I think it was tactically great, and it was with a great winner. We had Puck on the podium, and as you say, I supported as well, but it was just was not enough, and in the end, second is not terrible.
Certainly not. If we look with the bird's eye view on her Spring Classic season, as said, no finish without the top 10, win in La Flèche, podiums in Liège and Amstel, 4th place in Dwars door Vlaanderen, 10th in San Remo, 9th in Tour of Flanders. I still think that this is a bit too much racing. Yes, she was good at the end now. It doesn't really surprise me the fact that she's, or at least appears to be for now, better equipped to the paved climbs. Seen her posture, I think, is indeed better equipped to these types of climbs rather than the cobbles. But still, it's a lot of racing, and I will always be wary about it. Yes, she's good, but that doesn't mean she can't be better. But she's a multidisciplinary talent, and we've seen it so many times that it doesn't work out for these riders, that they burn out because there's not enough rest. So it's learning, but at the same time, like, where does this leave us with Pieterse? Last year she finished 11th in the Tour de France Femmes. In the final mountain stage to Alpe d'Huez, she was 17th. Where does this leave us with her? Because it's only logical, considering that she won the white jersey in the Tour last year, that she's going to try and do better. She appears to be climbing better this year than last year. So if they're also going to target that, then I would think at some point you also need to be wary and make some choices, like where do you want to place your accent? She is the world champion on the mountain bike. She is a medalist at the last Cyclocross World Championships. She is the current road U23 world champion. A jersey she will never get to wear, but nevertheless, she won it. Those are a lot of different talents. Classics, cobbled classics, Ardennes classics, potential GC racing, off-road. Like, you need to be wary that you don't burn out and make some choices of, okay, this is where I want to place my accents. Do I want to target the Tour of Flanders? If so, do I do it together with the Ardennes or not? I think it's possible to combine the Tour of Flanders with the Ardennes races, but maybe then it's not advisable to start your season in the Omloop. Maybe you start with Strade, and these results that she's gotten here give me at least the hope that the new course in Strade with the extra final lap is perhaps something she can handle, where at Strade I still somewhat had my doubts about that.
I think sometimes it's a bit lame, but sometimes they make this comparison that you can compare it to Van der Poel. But I feel that one thing that I would compare her with is the choices that she is going to be making, because, Van der Poel at a moment was, these cyclocross campaigns, we have seen how good he was there, and he was getting better and better on the road, and mountain bike was also something that he liked to do, and you have all these goals in mind, but at a certain point you really just have to make decisions and make sure that you're not getting hampered by doing another discipline next to the main goal, I would say. And that is something that they have to figure out, but as I said already, they have the experience there. Roodhoof brothers, together with the staff that they have, should normally be able to get something worked out that will work for Pieterse, and I feel that Pieterse as well is someone that is smart enough to make those decisions as well. But that is, in the end, it's really something that has to come from the team as well, and it has to be well thought out and well discussed. And I think that if that is happening, then of course we will see the right decisions being made and choices being made, I guess, as well. And it will be maybe at times not great, because we like to see her everywhere. but I think it's only going to be for the best, of her results, I guess.
It's only natural that at some point you need to make some choices in how you combine things. And this winter she already took a step with condensing her cyclocross program and limiting it to a shorter period, which is of course a shame because, as you say, we like to see her, but it's also a must. You need to take care of yourself and stay on top of your fitness. You can't just keep racing because you'll burn into the ground, and we've seen it happen to too many riders. So for the sake of her career, I really hope that doesn't happen. Overall, I think my thoughts of the campaign are impressive, consistent, and this final block of results really added some glance to it. Else we would have said, yeah, that's a good season, and now you're going to say, whoa, that was a really, really good Spring Classics campaign, and actually she was one of the star performers of this Classics season. So it's another step in her progression, and we'll see where it leads. If we look at some other cyclocross riders, because you had it mentioned just now that, well, making choices, somebody who made clear choices is Silvia Persico. She hasn't raced cyclocross in the past 2 seasons. I think that it's a shame that she stopped doing cyclocross because she was really good, actually at the level of being able to compete and finish on World Championships podiums. And I'm not trying to draw a parallel here, but it is a coincidental thing that since she stopped doing cyclocross, her road results haven't been as good. In 2022, at the World Championships in Wollongong, she finished 3rd, which was really good. She raced cyclocross, finished 4th at the World Championships in Hogerheide, then has called cyclocross a day. And while her results ever since have not been horrible, they've also not been amazing in the final 2 years. I only really saw her this spring in the Amstel, where she was in that group of anticipating riders. And she finished 5th there, was really struggling to hold on to Pieterse and Labous, which, yeah, it doesn't make all that much sense to me if this is a rider who in Wollongong was climbing extremely well. Who have I seen in the Giro Dawn do extremely well? She really was one of my top tier talents in 2023, but for her, again, I'm not trying to say that this is a consequence of turning her back towards cyclocross, not at all, but it is interesting to see that things haven't really worked out for her in the past 2 years, whereas, for instance, for Kastelijn, it has turned out. She has dropped cyclocross, limited herself to a very, very short winter campaign. I think she did 5 or 6 races this winter. But for her, it made sense. More sense than for Persico to me. Like, the choices you make, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's many factors coming in, and for Pieterse, it wouldn't make sense to fully drop mountain bike or to fully focus on the tour or whatever. But it makes sense for her to prioritize things a bit more to stay fresh. For Kastelijn, it made sense to focus on the road because she wasn't certain of World Cup selection anymore. She wouldn't make the current Dutch Worlds team, whereas on the road she was doing fine. And as a domestique now, she had a solid Ardennes Classic campaign. 15th in Amstel and Flesch, 10th in Liège. Today she was 7th as a leader in Brabantse Pijl. That's a very respectable season.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it is also in a way a bit personal how certain riders, athletes have a different way of how they go through the winter, and for one, it just works better if they actually would do cyclocross, and for others, it's it would work out better if they skip it or at least minimize the program. And it is quite noticeable with Persico that that transfer that she made to UAE, the women's team, and completely skipping cyclocross as a whole and not doing it anymore. I think that it didn't really benefit her. But with Kastelijn, you can see the progression really there, I guess, or at least you see that she's growing in her role, and she has been going quite well. It's now a little bit more in a role as a domestique, but I think that she has taken up that role quite well, and she gets her chances there within Phoenix, and I feel that it is she has been performing great, and she's making a very good career out of it. And I think that is, you need to have fun as well, but I don't think you will have a lot of fun if it's not going the way you want to, or the performance is not really there. And I think that currently performance is there for Kastelijn, so I think that the fun is also subsequently is going to be there. And I think that it is just, with a victory like the one in La Flèche with Pieterse, that is for sure you're not the one winning, but it's a team effort in the end as well, in a way. And I think that you can also really, it can boost the performance, and mentally it can also be a very good help when those performances happen. And I think that is just that can help you out in terms of motivation throughout the season, and also in your growth in the next couple of years.
For Persico, it's maybe more of a case that deal with UAE hasn't really matured in the way that she hoped it would. Her first season was still okay, but it wasn't the next step after that promising season for Valkar. As soon as UAE had full control over her, it was no more cyclocross, and then from there the last 2 seasons haven't really been great. Her contract is up at the end of the year. Hopefully she'll leave to a new environment, somewhere where she can revitalize herself, refine her spark, perhaps return to cyclocross. But even if it's just on the road, it's still great, because on the road her potential, I think, still is much higher than it is now. That Wollongong World Championships, I was really, really, really impressed by her that season. So I think it would be great if she could maybe go to a team like Canyon SRAM, somewhere where there's a few leaders, but she still has a number of opportunities. So I guess we'll see. On the men's side, we need to cover Thibaut Issam. His campaign here was not bad at all. He finished 12th in the Amstel Gold Race. In Flèche Wallonne, he struggled with the cold. He was pretty much having hypothermia at the finish. He still managed to finish 8th. Today in Liège, he said he was cramping up from pretty much 40k to go. So he told the team, let's go for somebody else. I'll try my best. Sprints to 5th in the end. The expectations were probably a bit high in Belgium. I saw him named as 2nd, 3rd favorite next to Evenepoel in some places. But nevertheless, if this is your first time exploring these races, I think you can be satisfied.
100%. It's somewhat the hype that is surrounding him. He's an established star without really having any results on the road up until that point with the pros. And I think that he has shown great results in the junior categories, and I guess the expectations are just going to be that little bit higher. I think for La Flèche, that's definitely a race in the next coming years where he will return and try to go for victory. I think that he was a bit unlucky with the weather. Maybe it's a bit of experience as well, what you have to do in those circumstances. But I think overall there was not really much they could do against Pogacar. But overall, I feel that how he has been riding such a race like La Flèche would definitely suit him well. I didn't really understand why people would expect that much from him in Liège. I think that the 5th place is really, I think for me at least, was above expectation. I didn't expect him to be in the top 5. To be honest, I didn't expect him to be in the top 10. But he managed to do so, and I think that those are the results that you can really use for next coming years. And it's also a lot of experience that comes into it right now. He has now done these races, and you take that with you in the next coming years. And I feel that it's just I feel that those next coming years, if nothing really bad happens to him and he's able to progress, I feel that we have to give him time. And it seems like in Belgium at times they struggle with that, but we need to temper the expectations a little bit and see what happens. But I feel that with these results and the way he has been racing so far, it can be very satisfied with that.
Nice carries a lot of pressure from his last name. However, a lot of it is also self-inflicted. When he was a 15-16, they made a TV show about him, which aired for 3 seasons in Belgium. So in that sense, I don't necessarily feel bad for him. I respect him for dealing with it. But if you seek the spotlights yourself, you can also expect a degree of pressure and expectation. And of course, at the end of the day, it's Belgium, it's a pressure cooker. Everybody there is crazy about cycling. It's the biggest sport in the country. The press is as big on it as they are on football in other countries. So it makes sense that there's pressure, but the expectations, again, I think were too high. Putting him as co-favorite next to Evenepoel for many of these races at debut it's a lot. It really is a lot. And this final here in Liège, I think, suits him quite well to finish in the top 10. His flat sprint has been kind of unproven, but looked quite good, although he did get out-sprinted by Velasco at the end. But nevertheless, it looked quite good, and what helps him is that if he gets dropped on the Faucon, which is a long climb, maybe a little bit too long for Thibaut Nys, although we have seen in the Tour of Hungary, he can take climbs from 4 kilometers, but a bit different. The level here is a bit higher. Regardless, if he does get dropped, and he can still improve on those numbers, but if he does get dropped, there is a lot of regrouping behind the leaders on that stretch behind, and that helps him. It's the same reason that we saw Quinten Hermans being able to podium here, and also see Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel do extremely well in this race. With this new final, it's a bit of a different game behind the leaders, because we've seen it quite a lot. Attack from the Redoute goes to the finish, and then behind there is a battle with some attacks, but also nothing super decisive. And then things regroup and you get a quite large sprint. I mean, there were 35 riders sprinting for 4th place today. That is a really big group. So in that sense, I think that really helps Thibaut Nys here in this situation. Moving on then, from road racing to cyclocross, because as you've noticed in the past couple of episodes, we like to try and form some sort of connection with the cyclocross season. Last year in this race, we saw Gerben Kuipers go in the early break. He raced today, but did not finish. It's not been an amazing road season for him so far, no noteworthy results. But the reason I want to talk about him is pretty much his team. Issam, Intermarché Wanty is the team with the smallest budget in the World Tour. They hoped that the success of Girmay last year in the Tour would spark interest from global sponsors. So far that hasn't happened. Wanty is willing to step down but keep up their payments if a new title sponsor brings in more additional money. Their cross team is also not one with one of the biggest budgets. They have Charles Liégeois, a coffee bean producer in Wallonia, as title sponsor. And that contract is expiring at the end of the season. They signed a 2-year deal with option to a 3rd season. It is probably likely that that contract will be extended unless a new sponsor for the road team is found and is coming in to sponsor the cyclocross team as well. But at this point, that seems an unlikely scenario. Go over some of the riders. I know if you're a subscriber to our Substack Inside Cyclocross, you'll have read some of this, but this gives us a bit more opportunity to go in a bit more detail about it. So there's a lot of work for Intermarché Wanty's cross team, Charles Liégeois, to do over the summer. Apart from their sponsor, they also have a lot of riders with contracts expiring. First of all, Gerben Kuipers. His deal is up at the end of the season. When he got signed by the team, Issam, well, I say season, in this case I mean end of the road season. Yeah, it's so confusing sometimes the way cyclocross contracts are structured. His contract, I believe, is expiring at the end of 2025, which is in the middle of the cross season. When he got signed by the team, we were super high on that signing. They were a winner on the market that season because Gerben Kuipers, racing for Proximus, working a factory job, had formidable, absolutely astonishing performances for somebody who was not fully devoted to cyclocross. In fact, he wasn't paid a dime for his performances that season. But at the World Championships in Hogerheide, everything came together for him. He finished, I think, 6th. But then that transfer to Wanty didn't really materialize. He got sick 2 seasons ago. Past winter, he broke his collarbone in Namur. What do you think they should do with his contract? Should they extend it, or should they let him go?
I think as long as you are not able to replace such a potential, because it really didn't come out last season, I would say, and he was a bit unfortunate, I would say, as well. But that in mind, the fact that he just, his potential is there. It is, if everything comes together, also in terms of his technique, if that improves, if he gets better in that area, I feel that he is someone that in races that suit him a little bit better, he could be well within the top 5 and race for podiums and even victories if it goes his way. But currently it isn't really going his way. You have to assess that, and you have to try and track his development and see if it gets better. Really put a lot of effort in that as well. Then upon that, you have to make your decision. I feel personally that if it goes his way, he's a great rider to have in your team. So I would say that you definitely have to look into extending if the money is there, and if it isn't going to be a crazy number that you have to give, I would definitely try and keep him.
I think it would be premature to let him move elsewhere. They need to move quick, because I think especially Paul Sousa will be eager to scoop him up. We know that they have some extra cash lying around, and this could be an interesting pickup for them. But surely that potential can't be gone, right? Because we've seen it still, that despite everything going on, he has shown his raw talent. He is still an unpolished product. His technique can still improve. His tactical abilities can still improve. But his power numbers, they are there in cross. What we saw this year in Ruddervoorde was impressive. He finished 5th despite racing like a lunatic. He was on the front for 40 minutes, and then of course when it's crunch time at the end of the race, he has nothing left in the tank, but he still ends 5th. That was a good result. By the time that he broke his collarbone in Namur, he actually looked quite strong in that race. His technique will hurt him a bit, which meant he was out of podium contention, but he was still doing well. I still believe in the potential of Gerben Kuipers, because also the season before, he showed his potential. He was 4th in that Troyes World Cup, which I spectated. He was 5th in Dendermonde. He's shown ability. It's just that 2 seasons in a row, things go the wrong way. I think it would be bad strategic vision to say, well, you got sick, you broke your collarbone, we're done with you, we're gonna forget the investments we've done, forget about it. I think they would seriously regret that if they let him go. Of course, he needs to be willing to extend with the team. The money is a question, but I think the team should go maximum effort to extend Gerben Kuipers, because without him, the team really has nothing.
Yeah, that is true. I have to agree with you on that. I think that if you look at it that way, and that's basically why I also said that if you are sure of having a replacement which is just, has a better perspective, I think at that point you could maybe consider letting him go. But as long as you don't really have that, I feel that he is definitely someone that you should just try to, you should trust in that development and keep trying. As you say, it's not something that has been, that is just completely gone. It's a bit unfortunate. Circumstances haven't really helped him, and I feel that it goes well, and you're able to really work on his weaknesses, I guess. That is just a rider with great potential, and the team doesn't really have that much perspective next to that, I guess.
Do you think Paul Sousa would try and sign him if he is leaving, or regardless that they'll make an effort for him?
Hard to say. I mean, it could be. I feel that they, at the moment, are not really... No, it didn't seem to me that they are really looking for a new rider, or they have their program, they have the talents that are coming through at the moment, and while that is also something that is not really sure, and we don't know how good those riders will be, to be honest, it still feels like Paul Sousa at the moment is not really looking into a rider like Kuipers. It would be interesting if such a transfer would be made, and I don't think it would be a bad move for Paul Sousa if they would be able to get him. But nevertheless, I think that it is currently, I don't think it's really up up for discussion, I guess, for Paul Saus. It seems like they are somewhat content with the riders that they have on the men's side.
Mette Penninga did say when he announced the Clementines as new title sponsor that he was eager to make a move on the transfer market if a big name became available. That's kind of where I think that Kuipers could be one of those names. But we'll see. I think a lot will depend on the monetary situation of the team. I do think that they will eventually reach an agreement with Kuipers. Also because the team really doesn't have that many other riders. Kevin Kuhn was on the team, but his contract ran out at the end of the cross season. My understanding is that it hasn't been extended. He's been removed from their website. He's been kicked from the UCI database from their team. So with Kuhn out of the equation and Aerts retired, they only have 2 male riders. Kuipers the only one in the elite category. We'll come to some potential replacements in a bit. But what do you think about, first of all, Kuhn not being extended? And 2, where would you see his future?
Kuhn is a rider that had some good years, and I think last year he struggled a little bit, I would say, but he was still, his performance wasn't great, and I think at one point, of course, a team will look at the resources, what they're giving out, and Kuhn is definitely one of those riders in which they will look at and think about letting go, I would say. And I feel that for him his future is not going to be with Charles Liégeois. I think that for him it's going to be Heizomat is, to be honest, the team that comes to mind, I would say. They have some Swiss riders already, and it seems like a team that would work out for him quite well. Depends on if they have room for him, but I feel that the rider of his, in terms of results and all that, he's definitely still one of the, I would say, 20 best cyclocross riders, I guess, that you have at the moment, something like that. So in that regard, I think he's definitely worth signing if you have the resources for that and you know what to expect from him. I think that it wasn't the greatest of years, I would say, from Kuhn last year, but you never know. A rider can always improve a little bit. We have seen it, for example, with a rider like Sveik. It could always get a little bit better, and I feel that if it is better, he's definitely a rider that is worth the investment.
Kuhn hasn't been as good as in previous seasons, but I also don't think it was horrible. Last season was a little bit better than the season before, so yeah, I'm torn because they have not extended his contract, and I think my main problem is I don't really see a perspective of a direct replacement from him. He's still a rider that scores a number of World Cup top 10s. I agree with you that Heizomat is the logical destination. Deschamps potentially if they find some new money. Ridley maybe, but Kuhn doesn't do that much gravel. I don't see any other options really. Deschamps, they've had Lilo on the team before, but I don't really trust them in finding money and then wanting to take on Kuhn, even though I think it would be a relatively good fit with the team. Again, who are they going to replace him with? Because Thijs Aerts has retired. That leaves Kaya Sola as their only other male rider. He's going to be a second-year U23. In terms of riders on the market, there are not that many full-time cyclocross riders out there. Toon van der Bos, Ryan Kamp. But is Ryan Kamp an improvement on Kevin Kuhn? Is Toon van der Bos an improvement on Kevin Kuhn? I don't think so. What do you think?
That's hard to say, to be honest. I think with a rider like Kamp, he is a rider that at times gets himself in trouble, I would say. His first laps at times are just a lottery. If he actually strings the race together and he's able to get through it quite well, we have seen from him, I would say, a little bit more than I have seen from Kuhn last year. You could consider it. But it is difficult because it's not really that you're going from a certain level to a better, to great improvement for your team. I think that's not really the case, and maybe they have to look, try to develop talent and maybe see if a great rider is free and you're able to get him, they should really jump on it and try to go for it. But I think at the moment it's just very difficult, and it's not really that you are going to improve your team that well with those riders if you let Kevin Kuhn go.
It feels to me like you're just replacing Kuhn with another version of Kevin Kuhn. A rider who will have roughly the same age, maybe 1 or 2 years younger, but you're not going to get much more progression out of him. He's going to get you roughly the same results. So I don't really know if it makes sense unless it's a budget cut and they're going to reinvest the salary that they are paying Aerts and Kuhn into a new Kuipers contract. But then I would think, hey, aren't you overpaying Gerben Kuipers? Because the negotiating position of Kuipers now is going to be less than it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he came off a very strong season, 6th place at the World Championships. He was up and coming. He was the hot prospect on the market, and now he isn't. So to me, that wouldn't make too much sense. One rider that I think is a good fit, but again, I don't necessarily think he would be a massive improvement for the team. And this is a road-based signing, not a cross-based signing. But I think Clément Venturini would be a good pickup for the team for 2 reasons. First of all, I said he's a road-based signing. On the road, he's proven himself to be a valuable rider. Intermarché is likely going to survive this relegation cycle, but they need the points. They're always going to be down there fighting in the trenches to survive in the World Tour. Venturini is a good point scorer. He finished 4th in 2 1.1 races in France. He finished 9th where I saw him, I think, in the Tour de Doubs. Last year he finished 2nd in Trobro-Léon. He had a good block of races there. He's not a bad cross rider. He excels on the faster courses. This winter was quite disappointing, but he, of course, finished in the World Championships top 10, twice 5th in Fayetteville, 10th in Hogerheide, was 4th in the Besançon World Cup that year. He's shown some flashes, but this would be a road-based signing that would have some additional value to the cross team. And the second reason is he's French, and Intermarché is a French sponsor. Important.
Yeah, I definitely see that point that you raised about Venturini, because I feel that road aspect as well is going to play a role, and definitely also the Intermarché part. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what will change in terms of the financial situation for Vanti on the road and how that will affect as well the cyclocross team. But it is at the moment on the market a bit dire in terms of what you are able to sign, and it seems that the biggest riders are somewhat content with the place that they're at the moment. It's not really like it was a couple of years ago where you just had, some of the bigger cyclocross riders not really being content with their place within the team. Someone like Sveik, and it is just, at the moment that's not really the case, and it seems like everyone is somewhat happy where they are, and it's mainly based on performances where decisions are made. We could maybe arguably look at a guy like Thomas Meen, because he is someone that it seemed like this season he has had an okay season. He's still someone that could go for a couple of years, and despite the fact that he is a rider that is not within that Dutch Belgium pool, he's definitely someone that has proven himself over the years, and I feel that could be a shout. But that's, again, financially you have to look at the benefits that a rider like Meen will bring, and it's just very hard at the moment to see. I don't really see a move like that happen, but it is maybe, for listeners as well, it's maybe one of the riders that we should think of in terms of moves that could be made by Charles Liégeois, and I think that is basically where they're at the moment. It's a difficult situation, and it doesn't really seem like they're going to be able to make big moves on the transfer market, at least for this period. And we have to wait and see how that will play out after next season.
Meen is definitely a shout. I don't think he would be too expensive. He has shown some margin of progression over the years despite his age, so I think that could be interesting. I wouldn't maybe go as far as say as he's been better than Kuhn, but he has certainly been on par with Kuhn the last season. And the team does have a history of working with riders from outside Belgium and the Netherlands, so it is one thing to consider. Definitely some open doors there. The team has historically been one that tries to sign young talent and work with them. It's been our understanding that they have been one of the teams to be working on signing junior world champion Mattia Agostinacchio. According to Daniel Benson, who I do trust on his transfer sources, it's likely that Agostinacchio will sign with EF Education. So without that, it doesn't mean that there are no other options. I'm quite bullish on Lennis Jacobs. Tiny rider, but super explosive, quite punchy, and his technical skills, they are so good. And if he grows a little bit, of course, you're taking a risk on that actually happening, but seeing his posture, I would imagine he's just late to hit puberty. Then you really have a good talent, and you can easily be looking at the Niels van der Putte scenario. Van der Putte was the same, not big, not muscular in the youth categories, grew later, look where he is now. I think Jacobs is a steal, and any team that picks him up will be lucky to have him on board. The opposite of Jacobs, Mats van den Einde, Belgian, finished, I think, 5th at the Junior World Championships. He had some bad luck in that race. I mean, who didn't? But powerful rider, if his skills can be a bit more refined. The road program that Wanty can offer him is quite appealing to him. Christophe Bazant, technical and strong rider, but didn't have a good season due to multiple illnesses, unlikely to happen. Maybe Florian Ferry, bit of a question mark. French rider, finished 9th at the World Championships. He is the French junior champion. He's been a bit inconsistent this season. I don't think he's really a talent that would move the needle, but something to consider. However, of course, it would have been a steal if the team could have signed Agostinacchio. I would like to cover him briefly before we move to the women's side of this team, Issam, because Agostinacchio, I'm torn, right? He had a good winter. He became world champion. He was, together with Brière-Joumard, the only consistent junior. He made serious progression. He's super explosive in the second half of the race. Really humble, really down-to-earth guy. I like his mentality. I like what I've seen from him this season. But to sign what is at least reported by Tutti BC, Italian cycling website, a 4-year deal directly to the World Tour, I don't know if I like that. The lemon needs to be worth the squeezing to get the juice, and I think you're taking a big shot on Agostinacchio to do that, because he hasn't really performed anything special on the road so far. But above all, in that interview with, I think it was his dad or his manager, I don't remember, the striking thing to me was that they said that for 2 years he would not race World Tour races but just do smaller races. Why are you signing directly into a World Tour team? What's wrong with signing for the development team of EF for 2 years and then having 2 years with a World Tour team tied into that? I don't really get this rush to get into the World Tour based on a cyclocross world title. He won a road race last Friday. It was a quite impressive attack. I do see his potential on the road, don't get me wrong. But is it worth squeezing this lemon so early to get him into the World Tour for maybe just a little bit of juice? Whereas you can get your full cartridge full of lemon juice if you take your time to develop him? I don't know.
A team like AF, I would say, is... I wouldn't say they're forced to, but if they are not doing that, and let's say Agostinacchio gets better and better both on the road and in cyclocross, but mainly on the road, I don't think AF is going to be a team at that point that will be able to compete to sign him. And I think at this point it's for AF just much more reasonable to sign such a rider. I think it's becoming the environment, I guess, of those teams that would normally not be able to sign him or not take. They are now kind of happy with the risk that they are taking with such a rider. They will help him out. They will try to make sure that his development goes well. And if he actually becomes this talent, well, then he's already within the team, and that's at times can really help in terms of negotiations and being able to keep a rider within the team, despite the fact that there is interest from outside. And I'm not a fan of the situation in which he's in at the moment, and the fact that he's signing with a World Tour team, or at least it seems to be that way. But it's also somewhat understanding in terms of the perspective that AF is in at the moment. It's just you want to be as early as possible with some of the greatest talents, and I think that at the moment that that World Championships really put a lot of emphasis on the talent that he is. I guess it really helped him out. I would say, because as you said, I can remember that there were some rumors after the World Championships that some World Tour teams were interested in him, and it seems to be now that AF is going to be the one that is running away with him. I just hope that his development is not going to be hampered by it, and that he's not going to be now, or that they are going to try and stray him away from cyclocross and put him really on a road program and try to change his way of how he is at the moment racing and having fun in both disciplines. So I hope that's not going to be the case, but I don't really think that AF is a team that does that, but we have to wait and see.
You're right in saying that this is the environment, and for EF it's a matter of either caving and giving him a World Tour contract and occupying a spot which is pretty much a waste on their roster because he's not going to be useful in races that he wouldn't be allowed to do from the Devo team. But for Agostinacchio, I think that for his development, it might be better to not skip any steps, and I don't really get why there's such a big pressure for everyone to sign with World Tour as soon as possible, rather than signing a deal which is 2 years and then allows you for more freedom afterwards, which can be that if you sign a World Tour contract from that development team, EF has first dibs, or it's just guaranteed, like the deal Casper Boremans has with Bahrain. But that is the situation. I'm curious to see what this means for cyclocross. He did have the intention to continue. EF has supported Backstedt in the past, but that was the women's team, which at that point wasn't affiliated with Valters. I don't know what the deal is going to be there. Maybe they strike a deal that he can race cyclocross for the Guercicotti cyclocross team. They race on Cannondale. The only other team racing on Cannondale, I think, is Deschart. I don't really see them strike a partnership with them to support him through the bike manufacturer, so it remains to be seen what will happen there, and confirmation can take some time, but let's hope that it works out well for him. Again, I do see his potential on the road, and I do think he can be quite good, but to me it seems like a lot of jumping and a lot of being afraid of missing the next talent, whereas at the end of the day, yes, he was good this winter, but we also shouldn't forget, if you ask me to rate the top 5 talents from cyclocross juniors this season, I would probably put him at 3 or 4, because if you look at the fact that we had so many strong first years, then they are a year younger, and I have to take that into consideration and therefore rate Brière-Joumard as the top tier talent from this year's junior class. Probably have to consider Filippo Grigolini, Gilles Lejeune, and then we come to Agostinacchio. So let's see what happens there. What we're also waiting for is clarity on the women's side of the Charles Liégeois team. We've covered this, I think, 2 episodes ago now, or maybe it's been 3, but pretty much to summarize, very tricky for teams without a road program to sign cyclocross riders. That's the situation Charles Liégeois is in. They have Brouwers, full-time cyclocross rider. They have Molengraaf. Molengraaf's deal, we don't really know when it's up. It's either at the end of the year or it's before the cyclocross season. Geert Wellens has speculated that Molengraaf would leave before this cyclocross season. What do you think overall of her situation? Because her contract with FDG is certainly expiring at the end of the calendar year.
It's a bit tricky, yeah, because it's the end of the contracts. They're coming up, and it seems to be that at the moment Molengraaf is not really in a the performances are not really there. It's difficult because it would require from both Francis Desjeux and also in a way, Charles Liégeois, both of them have to somewhat be patient because they know that the talent and the potential is there, but it's just currently not. She's struggling a little bit. I don't know for whatever reason. We had discussed that already a little bit. It's just very hard to guess, but it's just not really there. I feel that if they are not able really to offer, and I'm really talking about Charles Liégeois in a way, and I don't know how the contract is set up, but if they're not really able to offer more than they're doing right now, and she's not really happy there or whatever, it wouldn't be surprising if Francis Desjeux is going to be the only ones that are going to be, having her on the contract. And I don't think then that the Charles Liégeois contract will be extended, but it depends on the partnership as well. If the partnership is good between FDG and Charles, then I think that at that point they will keep it going. But it's tricky because it really depends on if FDG still sees a future in Molengraaf and keeping her. It seems to be that mountain bike is really not going to be a thing anymore. So we have to do the waiting game, I guess, at this point. You should be someone with maybe try to use some of your leverage and insiders information to get something out of here and get some more clearance. But I think from our side, or at least my side, it's just really going to be speculation at this point, and it's just very hard to guess what is going to happen really, and where Molengraaf will stay or end up going into next cyclocross season and also next year, of course.
It does indeed appear to me that mountain bike has been dropped. She had this special 3-team construction which allowed her to race for La Pierre Unity in mountain biking, Charles Liégeois in cross, and FDG on the road. She's been removed from the La Pierre Unity team side. She didn't do much mountain biking last year, but for Molengraaf, again, I think it would be premature for FDG to drop her. The 2 past seasons haven't been going great, but again, there's been reasons for it. This winter was completely ruined by illnesses. The winter before was ruined by chronic back pain. Those are important matters. She is still young. She's going to be a third-year U23. So for the team, I think it would be inadvisable to let her go. I don't think that potential can be fully gone. I do think that it's a little bit worrying, the fact that these 2 seasons haven't gone her way, but there are definitely, you can overcome these types of adversities and setbacks. So I think it would be quite a bad look for the team if they let Molengraaf go already. I think she'll have options, but I think for her it really depends on what does she want with her future, where does she want to go. Let's assume she stays with FDG. FDG has a new partnership with the AS Bike team. They have Lars Boom in as staff for the road team. I could see a situation where Lars Boom gets involved a little bit with the AS Bike team because he can work with Jerry, who also races for FDG, with Molengraaf, who races for FDG. And I can tell you, they will be ready to scoop up those French junior women on that team. Revol, the world champion, but they also have Lambert on that team. Talented. I can see the potential there for a FDG cross team under the umbrella of AS Bike team, and perhaps that would be a better fit with Molengraaf. She can race on Specialized all year round, doesn't need to switch bike in the winter, doesn't need to switch performance stuff, doesn't need to switch anything. I think that could maybe help create some sort of clarity and a better structure for her, because if she leaves, I don't really see any options for that team to sign. They are super limited, their hands are tied, they need to look at full-time cyclocross riders. They can look at Sanne Laurijsen, the junior woman champion, but apart from that, I think it's really hard to find somebody because, again, you need to be able to offer them a road program. They can't. I don't blame them for it because they don't really have the budget to run a men's World Tour team, let alone found a women's team. But at the same time, this is the consequence of the situation they are in.
Yeah, and we have said that before. I think it's just the situation they're in at the moment, and it's gonna be very difficult to get out of that. And decisions have to be made. It could very well be that we will see in the future that they will focus fully on the men's side because that is just a bit easier to manage for them at the moment, also financially, and they have this connection obviously with the road team, and that is just it's not there for on the women's side, and so it's just going to be a very difficult task to keep that going. I hope that they are able to get something going, but that's as we have tried to portray at the moment, it's going to be very difficult and tricky situation. So we have to wait and see how that will play out, and I think time will tell. It wouldn't surprise me if we know more going towards the summer, maybe the first couple of months into the season. We will know a lot more about the state of Charles Liégeois and where they are trying to head into the future on the women's side, but also as a team, as a whole.
Definitely, it's going to be an important off-season for them to sort it out. They are down to 4 riders on the roster. If Molegaaf leaves, they're down to 3. So there's definitely some work to be done there, and we'll see. Some of it will be solved before the cross season starts. Some of it might be solved January 1st, and then we'll see. I mean, I would imagine that there are some sponsors that would want to attach their name to mainly the road program through Biniam Girmay. Quinten Hermans is coming onto the market. Perhaps a return could be on the cards, but I kind of doubt that. I would probably see him go to Cofidis or Lotto. More likely one of those teams than a return to Intermarché, but we'll see about that. And I think we've given this some extensive coverage and kind of drawn the situation for that team. So thank you very much, Issam.
Yeah, I tried my best, and I think we did a good job there. So thank you for having me, and it's been a pleasure.
Few long monologues by me, maybe a little bit too long, but trying my best to give the best lay of the land as possible. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will be back fairly soon covering, I don't know what. We'll have a special episode coming up next week. We're going to talk about the Czech cyclocross program with somebody from the Czech Cycling Federation. And from there on, we'll keep some content rolling until the summer. So thanks for listening and catch you guys soon. Goodbye.